You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Hey there, welcome to episode 56. I am continuing my series of conversations through the month of April. You may or may not have heard that little bonus episode that I released a few weeks ago, but that's when I decided that I would publish these conversations as they come to me, not wait to just do one a month. So I know these episodes are a bit longer right now, but trust me, they are all worth it. Now, in the spirit of me having said on several occasions at this point that there's no topic I won't talk about, today my friend Lydia Feldman and I are going to talk about sex. If this is the first episode of mine you are hearing, you'll just have to trust me on that. I've said it a few times. I mean what I say. We're going to talk about all things sexual and what that really means. It all comes down to pleasure. That's part of who we are as humans. We have desires and we seek pleasure. So often, and Lydia is going to share parts of her story today, our upbringing and societal conditioning teaches us that it's wrong or that it's bad to want pleasure through sex. Perhaps that is true for you now, and I want you to know that it doesn't have to be. That's why I think it's so important to have this conversation, especially females, because we are the ones that are targeted with all of the good girl myths over our lifetime. That certainly happened to Lydia, and I'm sure it's happened with most of us. What I want to tell you about this woman before we get down to business is that she is one of the most vibrant human beings I know. She truly is. I met Lydia through coaching certification, and our entire tribe is amazing. We each bring our own special sauce to the world, and Lydia's is all about vibrancy. And what does that mean exactly? Well, for one thing, she wears the most colorful clothing and loudest accessories that she can find. She paints her walls in bright colors, and she just does what pleases her. That means in the area of sensuality, too. She shares so much with the women in her inner circle. And as you're going to hear, a lot of that comes from her own self-exploration. How do we know what really feels good or what we really like or what visualization really turns us on if we don't ever even explore that? Because we've come to believe that something is taboo or off limits or means we're not good anymore or even a little dirty, smutty. What if it's okay to be a little bad, raunchy, naughty? What if it's okay to push back at what the world around us tells us to be? And that's where Lydia goes every single day, on this personal exploration of what feels good. And I think she has surprised a lot of people around her who have known her before she embarked on this pleasure-seeking journey, myself included, in such a good way, though. I'm like, damn, Lydia, you really went there. It's such a beautiful thing. And I'm quite certain she has surprised herself with all her discoveries, and that's the best part of all. When I first met Lydia, she was living in the Florida suburbs with her husband and 2 young children. And when I first signed up on her email list, she was still running her Pilates studio, easing her way into the coaching space. Now she lives in Northern California with her family, and they have all of this acreage and animals, goats for sure. I think there's a pig, and the cutest puppy has recently been added to the mix. It's so fun to see these glimpses into her daily life, yet to also know that where she really shines is tapping into all of her sexiness and sharing it out loud, loud and proud. Lydia also has a podcast that I absolutely love called The Pleasure Seeker, and I picked two of her most outrageous topics to talk about today. She said absolutely nothing was off limits, which is my favorite response. I'm telling you, this conversation was so much fun to have, so let's get to it. Welcome, Mrs. Lydia Feldman, to our podcast. Thank you so much.
Oh my
Thank
gosh.
you.
So happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. Let's get right to it because we are going to have so much to discuss today. What lights you up, girl?
Oh my gosh. Well, when you sent me that question, I literally drew a blank. I was like, this is one of those hard questions that you think you know the answer to, and then you're like, long walks on the beach and eating out at restaurants. Oh, wait, no. But of course, it's such a good question because it makes you kind of think like what actually like gives me that spark. And I was thinking about it and like this is something that I have been really exploring for years now of like what brings me pleasure and what I judge to be like good pleasure and bad pleasure, not even bad pleasure, like higher elevated, like what should light me up versus like what when I do get this like sparkly energy inside of me. And like right now, I think and I this is how I notice what will happen in my body when I feel like charged as like a yes. And so I'm going to think of this as like what lights me up. Like it's something where I feel like I start leaning in, my eyes get really big, sometimes my mouth waters, and I get like this like energy that's like, ooh, ooh. And
Mm-hmm.
I've been really paying attention to it lately because um sometimes it happens when I'm ordering off a menu and I'm like, "Ooh, that sounds really good. Yes, I'm getting that cocktail." Or like, "Yes, I'm getting that like appetizer." Um, so sometimes it's with food, sometimes it's with like what I'm wearing and it's like getting dressed to me is like the most fun. And I'm like really just tuning into like what am I lit up wearing? And is it like something edgy or something kind of sparkly and glittery and smoldering and like energizing. So I think about it then. And I just think about like in my day to day activities, like just tuning into like, what am I doing that gives me that spark, that internal yes? And sometimes I call it an orgasmic yes. Sometimes I
Mm.
call it fuck yes. Sometimes wait, sorry, can we swear on this podcast?
Oh my God, yes. Please.
Like you changed the name. Does that mean I can't swear? Okay.
Oh my God,
Um,
no.
yeah. Um, yeah, and just like being willing to be like present in the moment. So I feel like a lot of things can light me up and a lot of things I'm just still learning like what kind of is not lighting me up.
Do you
I
know
don't know
how
how
much I love that though? Do you know how much I love that you're just basically like, I don't know, it could be something different at any point in time. It's just
Mhm.
that energy. Oh my gosh. And I should also add, and that you are such a colorful human. Oh my gosh. I'm looking at your pink background, which I absolutely love. I'm looking at your lovely pattern top, and you are just all about color and
Mhm.
all about that. I want to insert here a recent conversation that I had with a friend on a walk where we were talking about that, where I was like, I don't know what my favorite color to wear is. She was like, "What's your favorite color to wear?" And I'm like, "Black." And she just started laughing. And what am I wearing right now? It's like, but
You're like
Lydia,
black lights me up.
well, yeah, I mean, you have to have darkness to see the light, right? I mean,
Totally. You know,
yeah.
that's interesting. I love color, really vibrant, really like mix of colors, all the colors. And I actually feel like lately I've been like I think in the past I was drawn to black as a way of like hiding and being basic and kind of like this is just your standard little black dress or kind of like
Mhm.
as a fallback.
Mhm.
And lately I feel like I've been drawn to black as like a rich, deep kind of smoldering quality that I feel like can be really like racy in a different way. So I totally agree with you. Like, and
Mm.
I think like being honest with yourself. And so sometimes like we are just like in a habit of like going towards something because you think, yeah, that's what I like. But I think kind of a more like a ritual check-in with yourself to be like, what is that what I want right now? Is this lighting me up? Does this light me up?
Mhm.
And letting that whatever that black piece be, like sometimes you might need to do a revamp on the black pieces that are in there. That's
Mhm.
kind of what I did. I was like, I like black, but I'm actually leaning more towards leather and lace and like the dark kind of contours of black pieces versus I mean that's just I'm talking about clothes, but
Yeah.
um rather than like and getting rid of some of like the dull black. Yeah.
But it's all the things. That's what's so beautiful. I love where this conversation
Mhm.
is going already. Seriously, that's what's so beautiful. It's all the things. And I'm not sure that we pay attention to that enough.
Mhm.
And here's the thing. This is what I have to know about you, my dear friend.
Mhm.
I have to know because you and I went through coaching certification together, and I have watched you grow. I have watched you morph into this sizzling, on fire, freaking person who is really, from where I sit, in touch with her sexuality, in touch with her pleasure. And I need to know, how did you decide to become a sex and pleasure coach? What drew you to that area of all things we could go at?
Yeah, it's such a great question because okay, let me preface this by saying I'm a Taurus and I'm not like crazy into astrology, but I always felt like part of being a Taurus was like you are of the earth and you're sensual and you love food and you love like sex and like pleasure. And I remember thinking like, well, yeah, I like the food and I like to feel good, but I am I'm not sexual. I'm not that sexual. I'm not sexual enough. I'm not like in touch with this like sensual, like vibrant, like woman inside of me. And, just a little tiny backstory. I grew up very Christian in a very like conservative Christian household, went to a
Mhm.
Christian like summer camps and Christian college. I had to sign a contract saying that I would not have sex or do drugs or I would get kicked out of school and
Mm.
all this like code of conduct and dating men and guys in college and like believing like I wasn't pious enough. Like going to church and chapel was like a sign of approval for my boyfriend. I was like, I've come a long way.
Mhm. Yes. No, I
So seeing a
appreciate
picture in
that
a
backstory.
bra is like crazy to me. But so I think to me, like I before I started life coaching, I just was like in a low grade like misery where it wasn't like
Mm.
this poignant, like I need therapy, although we did kind of talk about that for a minute. And um it was just like everything on paper looked so good. Like I should be super happy and I should be totally content with my life. And yet there was something that I just didn't feel like I was lit up. I didn't feel connected to myself. I didn't feel super connected to my body. I had just had a newborn. So I had two kids and two little kids.
Mhm.
And I was just like serving everyone else, what seemed like I was just serving everyone else. So I kind of went to work to just start figuring out how to take care of myself better. And then, of course, I discovered life coach school and the tools of like thought management. And I was like, this is it. Like my mind just started exploding. Like I just felt like I had won the lottery with like figuring out some tools that made sense to me. And but what I kept coming back to is like, I think color was part of it actually. I remember thinking like, I want to be a color coach. I don't know, like bring
Yeah.
more color into your life, bring you more vibrancy. And I think part of me was like trying to tap this like creative energy, which I think of creative energy as also sexual energy. And it's like the power in your life. So if you think of this is like slight deviation, like chakras in your body,
Mhm.
like your second chakra, which is like below your belly button. It's like reproductive organs, it's creative energy, it's power. And honestly, I'm not super into this. So this is not like what I do in my coaching practice, but
Mhm.
it's like this like rooted energy within your like pelvis, low belly core that it feels like if you got on a Harley Davidson and you could just like wear some leather and like go off into the sunset, like rumbling, that like deep rumbling within you. I was like, I don't know what that means. Like that seems like no-go zone. Like I can be flirtatious and feminine, but like that feels on a superficial level, like the deeper like passion, I was like, I don't know, that feels scary and off limits and like not a good girl. And so not a good Christian mother,
Oh
which
my goodness.
I was like, this is like not me. I don't know. I want that though. So I think just personally, I just kept kind of like skirting around this like part of me where I was like, there's something darker. There's something more like weighty and like low, big vibrations that I want to tap, and I'm kind of afraid to. Like what's lurking below the rib cage? And
Mm.
so I think to me, I just started exploring it like if I can imagine like circling around and then I'd kind of like get a little bit deeper and then a little bit deeper. And um I started working with a marketing coach actually, and she, was like, you talk a lot about relationships. You've got a great relationship. And, what about like, she just kind of like, I don't know, putting some seeds in my brain, this idea of like, you should talk about relationships. You've got a great marriage. And, so for whatever reason, I started talking about pleasure. And I remember posting uh, something like a couple years ago before I was coaching on sex. Like, do you think pleasure is like uncomfortable to even say? I had a hard time even saying the word pleasure without being like, that's kind of naughty. I don't know. Can I say that online? And so in some ways, I just feel like this niche, this topic, this group, this like um, focus in my practice has like chosen me. Where I was like, I don't want to talk about sex. I don't want to be that girl. I don't want to compromise things and expose myself. And I don't, I don't know what I'm talking about. Like this is so new to me too. But it just kept coming back to me and coming back to me and being like, this is the work that it was the work that I wanted to do for myself. So I was just making my own progress and my own breakthrough. And then I just couldn't help but talk about it and keep going, keep going, keep going. So now I feel like I'm still in that like breakthrough within my own life and my own sex life. But I've come so far that like what I coach my clients on usually is like kind of like on this full range, but like my confidence and like my clarity of like how important sex is in like how you live your life, how you tap into yourself, how you trust your body, how you trust yourself, um, that it's just like the most fun. I'm like, okay, now it's not so scary. It's actually amazing and fun.
You have come so far. I'm telling you, you have come amazingly far. I have watched you do that. And I want to go back to something that you just said uh, in in all of this, in that it felt dark and weighty.
Mhm.
And was that in a bad way, or was it more of a kind of scary way? Or was it, I mean, tell me about the dark and weighty, because when you said that, I had a certain response, and I want to know what yours was when you thought of it as dark and
Yeah.
weighty.
I It's almost like mysterious in the way the unknown can feel scary and dangerous.
Hmm.
Um, until you start, but like it's like magnetic in some ways. It's like the elephant in the middle of the room that you're like, I want to know what's behind this closed door. And I feel like other people like I remember looking at a picture of like Sophia Vergara and
Mm.
just being like, wow, she's got like this sexual energy. She's so vivacious. I want to be like her. So I could tell that I was like drawn to certain icons, certain like women where they had like tapped some sort of sensuality that wasn't like surface sexy, that wasn't just like their shape, but like the way they were. And when I thought about myself, it was like basically just like stories of like personal shame, personal like not inadequacy, um, like, and almost like this part of me that if I allowed it to be part of my life, like bad things would happen. I think that was, and I didn't really think about it too much, but as I started exploring it, it was like, you don't talk about that kind of stuff. You don't go there. Like this power,
That's not what good girls do.
definitely not what good girls do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you should be like, and like pleasure and desire can be good if it's like within the confines of like it works with your partner and it like pleases your partner and it like is for someone else.
Yeah.
And I think that's true with like other like negative emotions like rage or sorrow, like these like heavier parts of you that's like I just kind of wish that wasn't there, or I wish I could have all the good and the easy and the pleasing to other people, but the parts of me that are unpalatable or less savory, you know, like the parts that I'm kind of uncomfortable with, I just would rather keep that like tamped down. But I just kept coming back to it like what's under there? Who is this like raging wild woman that I want to be, but I'm kind of like timid to get to know.
Yeah, it's like the ultimate in people pleasing, right?
Yeah.
Like
People pleasing myself.
people pleasing myself, but I mean, that's where you've grown, but you didn't start there. You started with how do I please my partner? How do I
100.
please others? So you have turned that around to how do I please myself and what lights me up? What is that energy in there? What is behind these closed doors? I love it. I need to know this, how did your family
Oh my
react
gosh.
when you started posting on social media? Because that was,
The shitstorm.
yeah, well, that's what I need to know all about it because you went from colorful and that kind of thing
Bubbly and
to
friendly and let's organize your desk and let's like
mm,
eat healthy and I mean
let's
my
talk
best
about
yeah.
sex. Let's talk about sex all the
Okay,
time. Let's do that publicly. What did your family
100%.
say about that?
Well, I will say my husband was relatively supportive and was just, you know, I mean, he was definitely excited that I was exploring more sex for our relationship. He was like,
Right.
"That's 100%
Yeah.
amazing."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but
and
you're
I think,
talking about it openly,
yeah,
publicly.
and yeah, and I that was like, I mean, my personality can be a little all or nothing. So it's like if I'm like hesitant, once I dive in, I can be like, "We're going all the way," and I push it, and then I kind of like freak out and pull back. And then I'm kind of like pushing it again. And then I pull back, which I think maybe is just normal. But so it was like basically about a year ago, I decided that like I was starting to talk more about pleasure. I was starting to talk more about body and my background. Like I owned a Pilates studio. I was a theater person and
Mhm.
so an actor. And, you know, so I've always talked about bodies and like been comfortable like talking about bodies, but not necessarily erotic bodies.
Right.
Um, so I started talking about it and I felt like pretty comfortable in many ways. But when I started talking about like eroticism, like, my husband was, like, oh, wow, okay, you're going there. Like he was okay. But then I decided to make a post that this is just one particular post that this was like so much backlash. So, and in hindsight, I can understand why. But I had written a post like talking about eating cum.
Oh,
And
I
yeah,
didn't
I
see
was
that
like,
one.
I was like, you know what? Like, I felt, I honestly, I was like, I just want to see what people are like. We all have these reactions. And it's like, what do you think about it? What do you think about like, there's like pros and cons, and people have different opinions. And my husband's uncle was following me on Facebook. And this is before I was actually trying really hard to not censor myself.
Mhm.
And just, I was like, feel the fear, do it anyway, and have your little shame storm and then like work it out. And people don't really care. Kind of testing myself in some ways. And so maybe there was a little bit of shock value, but almost just like, can I shock myself out of like my fear? So, there was this big family fallout. Like Lydia's needs an intervention. She's going to be like shaming the family. She's ruining the lives of her kids. And then my husband got really upset and he was like, you need to take everything down. My family's freaking out. And it became this like, people took sides on it, which was like kind of weird. But, so my in-laws were involved. I just was like, oh my God, what have I done? I've ruined everything and I should just quit now. And, but I didn't. I didn't quit. There was part of me that was just like, you know, these conversations are allowed to happen. Other people can have them. Why can't I have them? And so what I did was I just like censored who I posted to and kind of was like, I'm going to eliminate all my family from my Facebook accounts. If they choose to follow me, they're going to know that this is a business and this is like what I'm talking about now. And I can love myself and love them with like creating a boundary.
Mm.
And so there are still moments that come up that I, have like a moment of like, oh my gosh, did I just post that? But I had to kind of learn like what my standards were for how I posted, why I posted what I did, what I was willing to share, like from my own personal life. And certainly like if it was any information about my husband, like getting his approval, like I wasn't going to share something personal that would involve him. And so he has actually commented a couple times and been like, can you take that down? People are going to think that's about me. And I was like, it's not about you. He's like, yeah, but it makes me really uncomfortable. So we still are, in some ways finding kind of the balance of like what I post about in the service of my clients and the service of my audience that is not just for shock value or for getting over my own personal shame. So I think in that way it's evolved.
So did you take that post down? The controversial one about
eating cum.
the uncle?
Yeah.
Yes.
And other things that
Have you
I
removed
edited
posts?
that post.
Mhm.
I have removed posts and I've censored certain people since then. And so that situation caused me, I edited through because I was like in a total shame storm. I don't know what I wouldn't have probably edited it in the same way now, but
Mhm.
then I did. And I was like, I'm not going to shame myself for this because that's just where I am right now. Okay. I'm going to let me fix that.
Yeah.
Sorry. But what I did,
You're
yeah,
exploring yourself. You're not out there trying to please everyone else. You're like openly, vulnerably exploring your own
edge basically.
edge. Yes, thank you. That's exactly the
Yeah.
word. Yeah.
And what I realized was, I was like, listen, Facebook is this open platform that everyone's following me. They know me as Lydia. They know me as like super nice and fun mom,
A good girl.
friend, college, whatever.
Good girl.
And so
Mhm.
I don't blame them for being like, whoa, what is happening over here? Like, I don't know if I want to follow her, but I'm friends with her and well, so I did create my Facebook group in that moment that I was like, I run the Electric Ladies Lounge. And
Mhm.
it's like, basically I was like, all of my uncensored material goes into this group.
Mhm.
And the posts that I can't put on, or I don't feel like I want to, or it doesn't serve this like greater public forum can go into this group because the people
Mhm.
have opted in. It's only women. No husband. My husband's not in there. My uncle's not in there. And like it's a more closed, safe space to be more vulnerable, to have more open conversations. So how I show up in that group is a little different. And I am less judgmental of people having judgments of me on an open public forum. So, and even on Instagram, I feel like like the people that follow me on Instagram are just like they follow me as a coach. It's not necessarily like my childhood friends, I guess. Facebook
Mhm.
is a little bit more of the Wild West in my
Mhm.
mind. So I don't always necessarily post the same things in different platforms, but I feel like now it comes from much more of an intentional place for like where I am, like caring for myself and um, really speaking to a specific person rather than just like, I just need to like put myself through the coals and like jump into the fire and be like experience all the misery for the service of my growth, which I don't really think that's always the most productive way to grow. Like shock yourself into growth, you know?
Hmm. Do you still go through shame storms?
Yes. Yeah. And I think my relationship with shame has evolved quite a bit. I think in the past, I would always feel like if something felt bad, like I did something wrong or bad, I would just like totally close up, apologize, retreat, like delete all the posts or like avoid conflict at all costs because it was like so uncomfortable. And now I feel like shame still comes up and I just have like more space. I have more capacity to experience it. So I
Mm.
don't necessarily shut down and like avoid shame
Try to
necessarily,
fix
but
it.
yeah, I
Try
don't
to
try and
fix
fix
your
it.
reputation,
Mhm.
if you will, right?
Yeah. And so I feel like I'm more curious, but I think the actual experience of shame is still really challenging and something that like naturally I would want to avoid. So I would say like, you know, this happened to me kind of even just like exploring my body physically in somewhat recent times. Like I went through another experience where it was just like tons of shame and I just kind of shut down physically. And so even to explore myself sexually, I'm like, whoa, there's still some like emotions. I just think of it more now as like these are vibrations in my body that don't feel comfortable necessarily,
Hmm.
but they're mine and like they can't hurt me. Like that
Mm.
shame can't hurt me, even if it's like not something I want to like dive into.
These are vibrations in my body and they're mine.
Mhm.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Tell me about, because I'm on your email list and I love being on your email list, but I have to be honest, I don't always get to everything um, that you give to your audience. Tell me about your bare naked meditations. Because every
Yeah.
time I see your pictures, like you're naked. Now, you don't, show
Yeah.
everything, but it's like, oh my God, this is so sexy and sensual. And is Lydia going to be talking to me and telling me to, take a shower and listen to her voice while I do? I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
haven't done it
Yeah.
yet. Tell me about bare naked meditations.
Yeah. Well, you know what's so great? Like I have these ideas of like where I'm going to go with this platform, and so it's just going to get racier. So I will be like doing some guided masturbations and guided like
Oh my God,
real like
really?
physical space. But right now, but the meditation piece really it came to me because the idea like during sex it's so easy for our brain to be in a million other places. It's actually super hard, especially for women, to be present in our bodies in pleasure, like being open to pleasure. And
Hmm.
so, whether it's like, what does he see, or what do they see, and what are they looking at? What are they like experiencing? What do I look like? Which takes you out of your body. Or is it like literally what's in the dish? Like the dishes didn't get done. I got to write that email. Like, how long is this going to take? Yeah. What time do I have to get up in the morning? Let's just get through. Okay. 1, 2, 3 positions done, you know, race to the orgasm. So I think to me, I just was like, how can I actually start being more present in my body? And I had been meditating and I was noticing like, okay, this is a very similar practice. This isn't like something that is rocket science for other people. But in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, if I can allow my brain to come back into the moment and not like whack a mole the thoughts, but just be like a gentle, I think of like a feather, just like, there you go. The thought can just kind of move aside, keep going. And I'm just going to follow my breath back into my body. And so I was like, I honestly half the stuff I do, I'm like, this is what I want for my body and my life. This is what I need. And so I'm sure other people might need it too. So I developed a series where it's just like, all right, let's start in a naked place. And so technically you can be naked. You don't have to be naked, but it's just these audio recordings for you to be in your body, but not your typical like headspace, like breathing mantras. It's like, nope, we are going to be thinking about our body. There's some movement involved, there's some stretching, there's some like breath work, and all for the purpose of like, how can you be present in your body for 15 to 20 minutes?
Mm,
So it's creating the basis of like how to be mindful in your body, how to create mindful sex, how to start building the skill of breath work, of orgasmic breath, which is like incorporating more of your pelvic floor. Um, and just really clearing the brain clutter, the mind chatter, which is so distracting during sex, but just in life in general. So it was kind of an experiment for me where I was like, let's try with music. Sometimes it wasn't recording and then I had to redo it. And then it was just sort of like this experiment that I tried, and it was pretty, I think, pretty successful. So now, I've transitioned to doing other things, but we'll probably return again because I think it's a really helpful practice to be in your body, to be mindful, and to be present.
love it. How about for those of us that are feeling like a negative body image and just the thought of being naked
Mhm.
at all, other than taking a shower, other than when we absolutely have to be, other than when we're having sex, other than when we absolutely have to be. How
Mhm.
do you how do you help others with that, kind of try to get past that negative body image that we have created?
Yeah. And that's actually part of why I wanted to have it be a like a naked meditation. And
Mhm.
always it's an option because sometimes it's like that's not appealing. But to think like how can we get to know ourselves? Like when we think like what lights me up, I want that to be like, am I in tune with what my body feels from the inside? The sensations it feels, the emotions that I feel, like who I am. I
Mhm.
know who I am. And can I start to like that part of me? Can I even maybe love that part of me? So it's like creating like know, like, and trust. Do you know, like, and trust yourself? Like, you can't trust yourself to make decisions and to be in your body if you don't know yourself and if you don't start to try and like yourself. So when you think of the outside body, like, I think sometimes we just need to meet yourself where you are. So that might be like in the shower, can I just slow down how I lather soap on my body and notice what parts, like, what do I know about my body? How can I like that part of my body that isn't triggering? That I can like drop into the sensation of my body without so much brain chatter of like judgment and criticism or like not enoughness. Um, and then it's like you kind of build that skill to like other parts that do feel a little more loaded. And, I think whether that's like looking at yourself in the mirror and finding something that you can appreciate about yourself. Maybe you
Mhm.
don't love it, but you can like appreciate, like, you know what? My legs are getting stronger from walking every day. Or like this part's not so bad. My hair actually looks pretty good. Maybe like the color of my eyes are really beautiful. And so it's like finding ways you can be nicer and like more kind to yourself and really being intentional with that because to be honest, like if we just go our default brains just go off, they just like are in the gutter. Our brains are in the gutter about our bodies, about ourselves. And it's like this like soundtrack in the back of your head that if you're not paying attention to will just make you not want to be in your body.
Mhm.
Certainly not want to spend 20 minutes listening to a meditation or 20 minutes like having sex. You're like, let's just get to the orgasm part because that dopamine hits awesome. But other than that, we don't need to spend too much time here in pleasure, like because the body doesn't feel pleasurable.
Mm. It's creating space for yourself to feel really what we were built to feel, but just not really allowed, if you will, for all of the societal reasons and everything else to feel good about experiencing,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And I think like just being present, like you can't really experience pleasure. Pleasure is like of the body in the moment.
Mm,
And imagine being on a beach in Mexico, maybe a beautiful drink. The weather's perfect. And it's like you have to be in that moment to experience the pleasure of the moment. Because if your brain is like, oh my gosh, where are my kids? They're running off towards the rocks. They're, like, I need another drink. Like, where's the server to like your brain can easily go out of the moment and not even enjoy a beautiful, beautiful Mexican surrounding, right? So it's like the willingness to want to be present, the willingness to like guide yourself back into the moment. And so it is like your brain has to be like willing to go and be present. And so you notice all the like badgering thoughts that come up, and just like a little feather, you can just be like, all right, we're just going to get to that later. We're not going to deal with that. Um, and then like certainly to be willing to go and like take a look at some of the thoughts and question them. Like, is it true that I'm a fat cow? I don't know. I coached a woman who was
right?
like, yeah, she was like, I feel like a beached whale. She was pregnant as well, but she was like, I literally like, I cannot feel good in my body. Like the way I think about my body, I just feel like so big. Um, and so we just talked about like, all right, that sentence comes up in your brain and you feel terrible and you feel fat and you feel gross. And then your husband wants to like have sex with you, but you're like, that literally is like the last thing I want to do coming from this feeling.
Hmm.
So how can we just like gently question that thought? Like it's a sentence in your brain that seems true, but we can just kind of find the wiggle room in it because it's like a sentence that makes you feel like hot garbage. I'm
Yeah.
a beach whale.
Hot
I did.
garbage. Yes, for real. Oh my gosh. So I think this is a good segue into talking about your podcast, which is The Pleasure Seeker.
Mhm.
And I love it. And there are a couple of episodes that have such audacious titles that I was absolutely drawn to them. And so I think I need to know how you came up with Just a Little Gay.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about that one. And I've got one other one too that I was just completely drawn to because I'm like, the audacity. I love it.
Yeah.
Just a little gay. What
Well,
made you do
yeah.
that?
I so this is like desire happens in your brain. Desire is something, it's like the sentence is I want. And a
Hmm.
lot of us are drawn to like, I want candy. I want rest. I want to sleep in. I want. So you can feel like I have desire in my life. It's a functioning mechanism in our lives.
Hmm.
And it doesn't always relate to like passion, like desire, like the feeling of erotic desire, because our brains are elsewhere, spending our desire elsewhere. And so when I think about the ways to be in your imagination, like the ways to be in your mind that allow you to feel desire, like the emotion of desire, and can allow your brain to like turn on, like your body to get turned on, to be aroused. And what's so interesting is like when we think about what turns us on, it's like part of your brain might say, like, oh, my husband should turn me on. And then your body's like, nope, oh, that didn't work. Next. And so it's like all the other things that you're like, what? Let's get super curious about where my imagination can go. Um, and so on one level, it's like your imagination is this like playground. And so I always like to have my clients like, what body parts turn you on? Maybe it's male body parts, maybe it's female body parts, maybe it's the sound of sex, maybe it's the sounds of like showers and like steam and like bodies moving. It may be visually like watching two women kiss or like imagining kissing a woman, imagining like the different textures on your skin, like a female skin versus male skin, and or something in between or multiple bodies or so it's like sometimes we have so much judgment on like what we should be turned on by, what we should be
Hmm.
identified as. Like we shouldn't be like, I'm heterosexual, I'm married, therefore I must be turned on by this one person. And certainly most of our work is to be like, how do we get our relationship on the same page? How we can certainly get turned on by our partners, but I think like opening up your imagination to be like, yeah, everyone's a little gay because you're human and you've got an imagination. So it's like I'm like, where are you blocking your own pleasure power? Like, where are you blocking it in the sense that maybe like if you didn't have the judgment on it, you could be like, yeah, I'd make out with a woman. I'd have sex with a woman. I'd have like a threesome. I'd have um like or at least imagine it. Maybe that does turn me on a little bit. And if I didn't have the judgment, I wouldn't have to identify like who I am as a person as this category. I'm just a person who has an imagination. And it's so great, my friend.
I
I'm like,
love that because in that episode, you talk about it's not binary. It's not this or that.
Mhm.
You even bring up, and I learned something there because you even bring up pansexual and omnisexual. And I was like, what even is that? I'm not sure, you know?
Yeah, and I
So,
think there's so many new terms that people are
mhm,
learning still of like what sexuality is. And in some
mhm,
ways, we're in this renaissance of like ways to identify yourself. And I think this idea of like, I I get to just be myself and just curious about what works for me and what really doesn't work for me. And like sometimes something might work and sometimes another thing like feels a little more erotic. And I think it will always serve us to just be present with like our own imagination. And in the moment of sex, you might not feel like it might not feel the time and place to be totally off in your mind imagining something else,
mhm.
but knowing that like we can flow in and out of fantasy. And I talk a lot about like stoking your fantasy, stoking your imagination. So if you wake up and you've had this like really racy dream, I mean, I remember I woke up maybe a year or so ago and I had had this really vivid dream. And I was walking through Coney Island with my ex boyfriend. We dated for a long ass time, almost married, and madly in love with each other. And I just remember waking up and it wasn't super erotic, but it was very like intimate. And I just remember waking up and feeling nostalgic for him, nostalgic for this like mid-20s time in my life, like living in New York and like what kind of like this like time and period, this relationship. And I think like our dreams and our memories and our fantasies are part of who we are. And it's like so often we find like, well, I can't think about that. Like that's bad or that's wrong. I shouldn't think about this sexy thing or look at this like sexy thing over here. And certainly not think about an ex lover. But it's like, I was there. That was my experience. And I want to take from it and like let it be something that I'm still living and breathing, that I'm an erotic, turned on woman. And I always get to make decisions. Not like that means we're going to go have like a crazy orgy, maybe
Mhm.
if that's what you want. But it's not like our imagination, like, is this uh like be all end all, this is going to happen. So if you don't want it to happen, don't think about it. If that
Oh,
makes sense.
yes. Thank you so much for bringing that up. And that was the other episode that I said that I loved so much because again, the audacious title, Your Fantasy Fuck.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, what? I have to hear this. But that's where you tell the story about your ex and about having
Yeah.
that intimate experience and about dipping into your imagination. And, just a little gay is more about curiosity and that kind of thing. But all of those things like curiosity, imagination are um, so many times off limits. And I love what you just said about just because you're imagining it doesn't mean you have to act on it. It doesn't mean anything, but it just creates this sensation in your
Mm.
body that you can embrace and you can just be in awe of and enjoy it and be pleasured by it.
100%.
Like, it's
Really like
not
a
like feeling guilty over a dream or a fantasy that you've had. I mean, what, why? Why?
yeah. And I think like when guilt comes up, it's like it's a red flag to be like, okay, what's going on for me? Like, can I
Mhm.
keep checking in? Like, I feel like I did something wrong, but was it wrong? Like, why am I judging it as wrong? It whether it's unfaithful or it's bad, I shouldn't be thinking about people this way or that way, or I'm a bad mom. It's like it's like the thought finder of like, what are you making it mean?
Mhm.
And like you can always decide how you want to like what you want to take action on. But I want to think like if I can feel curious, if I can feel like calm and open and present and playful, like all of those feelings in like whatever's going on in your imagination, all the kind of things you can like help clear the space in your mind so you can be present and show up to sex more playfully, more open, more calm, more curious, then what you end up doing together with your partner will change. And like your experience of sex and pleasure will change. So it's not always like the same menu. You might have more courage to change things up or to be like, listen, we're not going to, do the same things over and over. I want to try this, or I want to explore some of my desires and connect with you in a different way.
Mhm. Speaking of exploring desires, I have to ask, what is a sex club and have you ever been to one? I need to
Yeah.
know.
um, well, so there's kind of this, I'm sure there is a wide range of experiences of people gathering and having sex in the same
Mhm.
place.
Mhm.
So um, you know, on one level, like it could just be like a strip club that has like sexual energy. And
Mhm.
that's like what people would associate with like a dance arena or, like venue, right? Dancing,
Mhm.
stripping. Um, and that's a little more like we pay and we have an entertainment experience and maybe extra things you can pay for. But I think like more of an organic sex club that I've experienced is like this is a big party and it might not be fully legal. So the way like in San Francisco, for instance, it's like you can't sell alcohol and have sex happening in the same building.
Hmm.
So it's like kind of a liquor law, but it's technically like anything can happen in a party. So like they don't sell anything. You buy a ticket and you enter into the like big like venue, right?
Mhm.
And then there's kind of like some activities or like entertainment that might be there, but it's not like you bring your own booze. And so they kind of get like the workaround.
Mhm.
Um, but so anything can happen in those kinds of environments. It could be a swingers club, it could be a swingers party where it's like or very organized. It could be something where there's just like rooms and people like are having like open orgy sex, like everything, anything goes. It could be um couples, it could be trans, it could be like all men, all women. So you can like there's once you start taking a look at these things, there's lots of organization.
Wow.
And um I went to a sex like an orgy in at Burning Man. That was the first time I had ever been to anything like that before. And it's like this tent. I mean, anything goes at Burning Man. It's a
Mhm.
wild party, let's just say.
So I hear.
Um, Sure. And so it was just like a huge dome and it was just like rooms with pillows and music and lights and kind of like different vibes and everyone's just kind of either like like communicating with people like, hey, I'm just here to watch, can I watch, like, are you okay with me watching you, or it's kind of like, can I touch? And so it's like, you know I think going into something like that you just need to know what your boundaries are, what you're okay with, and like expect certainly, like there might be some discomfort and you might be a little awkward, and but in the spirit of exploration and just kind of like, hey, what do I want here? What do I want to experience? What am I okay with? And if I'm just dipping my toes in, then I'm just going to be willing to like say no. I can leave whenever, I can experience whatever. But it is, I think it like comes to like creating a consensual environment, which is like great sex has to be pleasurable and consensual.
Mhm.
Like you have to be a yes. So when you feel yourself being like, I don't know, I'm shutting down. I don't want this. I'm a no. Like that is 100% on you to be like, okay, that's what no feels like.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm a no, I'm a no. If I'm like a maybe, I can decide to go either way. But um, yeah, I remember the first time I went to a sex club in San Francisco, I was so nervous. I was really I was just like, "Oh my gosh, what is happening? This is crazy." I drank like we went to dinner beforehand and I like feel like I had like 5 drinks and I didn't get drunk at all. I was just like, "I'm not even getting buzzed. What's happening?" And we had taken like a little ecstasy and I just was like, this is like my adrenaline was so high. I just felt
Mm-hmm.
like nothing was like hitting my system.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, when I get nervous, I get like kind of shaky. And I was just like, oh my God. And then we like got to the club. Of course, we were like the first ones there. And they're like, okay, newbies here. Like standing in like an empty club, like, okay, what do we do now?
Where are all the naked people? What's happening?
Do I take my clothes off? Leave your clothes on. I'm going to leave my clothes on. Okay, I'm staying clothed. Who do I talk to? And so then, we kind of like relaxed into the evening and it ended up being a super fun night and everything kicked in. It was a great time. I remember bits and pieces. But I think just to me, what's so interesting, I went to like parties like that before I did this work. And in my mind, I still felt like I was not sexual. So it's so interesting. My experience would say, like, from the outside looking in, be like, no, you're a theater person. You've had crazy experiences. You've been like even my husband's like, you are super sexual. What are you talking about? But I think in my mind, like I just was like, that's crazy. That's like the crazy side of me, but like the real me is like good. And so I think doing the coaching has been so helpful because it's like, who am I? And that is the same person. And
Mm-hmm.
how can I like make my sex life a safe, like beautiful, calm, curious place for me to live
Mm-hmm.
versus like the crazy thing that you do and you get drunk and you like go have a wild time and you like step into an alter ego, you
That
know?
is also good. Back to the binary. I mean, why is it not good to go to a sex club or to
Mhm.
have a fantasy or to have an experience outside of your comfort zone
Mhm.
that has been created? I mean, why is that not good also?
100%.
If
It's
it
just like
is
so much
pleasure.
judgment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If it is pleasure, that is, wow. Okay. Oh my gosh, we could go on all day, but I want to just touch one more time. I want to bring it back to your group, the Electric Ladies Lounge, for women only, or,
Yeah.
that,
Right now it's women only. I
yeah.
haven't had anyone gay or trans or
Mm-hmm.
like somewhere in the middle
Mm-hmm.
ask about it because I created the group to be like very female centered,
Okay.
female centered.
So if you
Um,
identify as female,
yeah,
can you
yeah,
still get in? Yeah.
I would say identifying as female because that's kind of the space that I want to create, very feminine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that might change in the future, but right now I feel like there's a lot of like women's groups, but I just like think that there's a different energy when you're like, hey, we're all ladies here. We're all like, we're not trying to like do couples work here. It's just like what's going on for
Mm-hmm.
you, your
Mm-hmm.
body, your femininity. And sometimes men are involved. And sometimes like there's a penis. But really, this is kind of your pleasure experience,
Mm-hmm.
which like the sex is part of that, just one part of it.
Yeah. What kind of things go down in that group?
Yeah. So
Like what you just talked about. I think there have been you know, um, some toys demonstrated, which
yeah, yeah, we'll do a
I
toy
know at one
review.
point you were like, I'm gonna show you how this works. And I'm like, oh my God, is she gonna, but
How much is she going to do?
I mean, yeah, how much is she gonna show? And it really was a very nice tutorial about this is how it works, but it wasn't like, you were actually
Yeah.
doing the thing. But
Watch.
it's like, this, I'm going to take it out of the case. This is what it looks like. This is, how you use it. And I'm like,
Mhm.
this is like kind of what some of us need, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just the basics.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I want to like frame the group where it's like, we're going to talk about this stuff. We're going to like let it be normal. We're going
Hmm.
to like any question, any experience is valid and open.
Hmm.
And um not like we're still ladies, like we need to keep it prim, but like I know where my comfort zone is and
Hmm.
want to feel like yeah, it's not a sex club. It's not like open
Right.
sex, you know,
Right.
but it's like we're going to like I want to like bring it all out, talk about what's going on in your mind. Um so most months I do an erotic book club. So kind of like send out the topic of what the book is for the month and kind of do readings from it. So
Mhm.
there's like erotic readings once a week and kind of like sometimes they're nonfiction, sometimes they're fiction. Um, I do a challenge pretty much every month. There's a challenge of some sort. So it's like prompts and kind of like how to get you like thinking more creatively in bed. Like one month we did like a positions, like how many positions can you try?
Mm.
Another month was like your smutty mind, like how to like really let your mind get into the gutter and imagination. Um, and just kind of like this upcoming month for April, we're going to do like a pleasure reset. So it's like really meticulous every day, kind of going through the foundation of what I teach my clients and just essentially like creating calm and like safety within your body and then curiosity with yourself, um, creating a sense of like courage and commitment to like trying something vulnerable and being open
Mhm.
and trying new things. So every month is a little different. But I do feel like it's evolving and essentially it's just a place to like play and be open and kind of get inspiration for like how to be in your body, how to live erotically in your body, and share that with the people that you want.
I love it. I love it. So I will add a link to any female identifying human at this point can join that group,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
it is evolving, and we'll see where it leads down the road. I will add a link to that group in the show notes, as well as your
Mhm.
podcast and your Instagram, Facebook, anywhere else that people can reach you, your website, anything
Yeah, my
else?
website. Yeah, and I just would say like there's so much I like to offer as much free content as possible. So
Mhm.
it's like you can really start putting these things into practice. So both on Instagram and Facebook, and then in the Ladies Lounge, Electric Ladies Lounge, and the podcast. Really, it's like where I put all of my ideas, all of my content, all of the things that I'm like thinking about and helping my clients with.
Mhm.
So you can start putting those things into practice right now. And in this upcoming next few months, I'm expanding some of the audio like recordings that I'm doing. So possibly like a guided masturbation series, a like orgasmic breath, tantric, um, tantric practices that you can start doing in a really like introductory way
Mm.
that can be expansive, but not necessarily like full blown, like you don't know what you're doing and it's like overwhelming and it's like really
Mhm.
weird. Um, and then I always invite people, if they are interested in something more personal and more tailored to what they are going through, I offer one-on-one coaching for 4 months, and it's weekly coaching, and that's where we can like really deep dive and tailor all of this work and coach your brain.
Mhm.
Like the tools are there for your body, so it's a somatic like way to treat your body and to live in your body, but it all starts really with like creating a pleasured brain. Like you're
Mhm.
open to pleasure in your mind and all the ways you block pleasure. So that's kind of where you have to start and then like bringing your body up to speed too, like just gently creating more pleasure in your body.
Being open, being curious, allowing your imagination to really kick in and do its thing. I have to say, I have been coached by Lydia, and she is amazing.
It's so
So
fun.
I can give you
So
my personal recommendation there. It's really good stuff. Whew, that was fun.
Woo! So
That was
good.
fun. We talked about all of the things, but yeah, especially with your podcast, obviously there is pretty much no place she's not willing to go in terms of, what we are exploring and identifying within ourselves. It's amazing. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing.
Of course, my pleasure. And I just always like to remind people that, especially women, but all people, all the humans, that your sexuality is just part of who you are. And so if it feels like something separate and something apart from you and uncomfortable and alien and weird and bad, then it will only serve you to like just take a look at that and just like embrace what's happening in like what's the disconnect, because like your body can be the safest place to retreat to. And if it doesn't feel safe, it doesn't feel connected, if it feels like not enough, inadequate, all the things, then being willing to go and like create your body and your pleasure as like the most nourishing, safe sanctuary you can possibly imagine. So if it presents as like mediocre sex or bad or non-existent sex in your life, we always still come back to like what's going on for your experience in your body. And how can we create that as like a safe, calm place first? Because otherwise the pleasure piece just won't connect. So sometimes people are like, oh, this is like, I'm scared to like go into it the same way I was. And I just love the approach that it's like, we always start with like safety first, like creating like a calm place for you to be in your body. And then the stuff that's scary, like you always know how to get back to calm. You always know how to like nourish yourself and calm yourself, be with yourself. So sex doesn't have to be this like hurdle. It's just like a natural progression when you're ready.
Love it. Your body is your sanctuary and pleasure is innate. I mean, that's what we're always after. Why not go for it? Oh my gosh.
100%. We are all pleasure seekers.
We
It's like that's our
are.
humanness. And if you are sick of getting it just from donuts and wine and like people pleasing and the ways that like you get this dopamine hit, you get that pleasure, but it's not like a deep, grounded, orgasmic yes kind of pleasure. It's like this like
Yeah.
fast fleeting pleasure, which I'm
Mhm.
not judging that. Like I like a good glass of wine.
Mhm.
Doesn't always like me the next day. So I want to have some diversity and some like real grounding, like sustainable kind of pleasure that isn't like doesn't have a negative effect on me
That
after.
isn't as fleeting too. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, my dear friend.
Of course, Rachel, it's been so fun. And yay,
Yes.
I'm so glad to be on your podcast. I feel so
Me
honored.
too. Me too. All right. Definitely check out Lydia's podcast too. I'll talk to you soon, girl.
Okay, see you soon.
Bye. Ooh, is it hot in here or is it just me? I am definitely coming away from this thinking that I might have some pleasure areas to explore myself. And what's so wonderful about that is I feel like I have permission to do so. Every time I interact with this woman, she reminds me of all the fun things I could be doing in my own life. Pleasure is one of those things that we just don't consider how important it really is. Then, when you encounter another human who is out there being a living example of what's possible, you can start to imagine how it could be possible for you. What if our imaginations and fantasies aren't bad after all? What if living a turned on life and embracing your own sensuality could be easy? Oh, the possibilities and the fun to be had. Check out Lydia's podcast, The Pleasure Seeker. Join her Facebook group. Sign up for her emails. I've linked everything up in the show notes for you. She really does give so much free advice, and she's an amazing coach. I tell you this from personal experience. So if this is an area of your life that you've been ignoring or avoiding, I highly encourage you to get yourself connected to Lydia's world, because she is truly a woman who knows how to light up and shine on.